The story is about Shang Go, a 25-year-old guy who makes games alone. He's been teaching himself how to code and design. He's working on a game at his computer, creating 2 badass monsters. He's feeling worn out, so he leans back in his chair to take a quick break. Money's tight for him, and he hopes this game will finally make him some cash after 2 months. His phone starts ringing, and his landlady, Ma Chun, yells at him for the rent. He gets worked up and asks for a few more days, saying this game will hit it big. She reminds him that he's been saying this for the last 10 years, and mentions how his previous games flopped. Only 10 copies were sold, and she bought one. He jumps in, claiming it's just that people lack good taste. She snaps back, saying he's the one with bad taste and warns him to pay by tomorrow or he'll be out. Looking at the rent bill, Shang thinks maybe she won't kick him out if he just plays it cool. Fired up, he decides to work faster. Out of nowhere, his PC shuts down and restarts. His computer starts bringing his monsters to life as it finishes the storylines and adds code while fixing glitches on its own. Shang freaks out and thinks he is done, but the monitor stays lit up. His game fantasy world is launching and everything in it is becoming real. He is completely confused about what is happening. Seeing his PC crash and overload, he completely freaks out, thinking his life is over. But despite the chaos, his monitor is still on. He watches in shock as his fantasy game world starts releasing. The progress bar jumps from 15 to 30, then straight to 100% in no time. Before he can process it, his game and everything in it become real. Just then, the whole building starts shaking like there's an earthquake. He bolts for the exit and steps outside to find this giant tree with massive roots wrapped around the building. He wonders why it looks so familiar. People around him are panicking because their phones have lost their signal. Suddenly, he sees a flying monster crash into a media helicopter. The helicopter crashes to the ground and the monster with its fierce red eyes also falls. Everyone runs away, but the monster remains standing. Right in front of it stands a tiny kid holding a fluffy bunny toy and looking completely helpless. Shang stands frozen in fear as he faces the monster he has created called Graffin. The rank C monster is known for its deadly scream that can cause severe ear damage. The creature looms menacingly over a little kid, so Shang rushes forward to shield her ears from its terrifying cries. A horned wolf suddenly charges into the scene and smashes through cars as if they are nothing. It takes down Graffin in a single move and drives its horns straight through the creature. Shang recognizes it as the Horned Dire Wolf, an elite rank B monster with an incredibly sharp horn and a lightning charge ability. Zhuang slowly opens his eyes and realizes he's in a hospital, with the same little girl snoozing by his side. Still on the fence about those monsters being real, he flips on the TV to get some clarity. The news is buzzing about this giant tree towering about 5,000 meters high, but can't reach its waist. Then, a bat monster swoops in and attacks a reporter, so they switch to another broadcast showing a massive hole going way down underground. A team of pros has made it 1,000 meters deep. Suddenly, an emergency announcement urging players to head to the reception hall for a showdown with the monsters. Shang can't help but think about the players and all the chaos these monsters can cause. Just then, a settings screen pops up right in front of him. Shang realizes these settings are exactly how he set them up for his fantasy world. He sees his stats, which show he's a game designer, and can't help but wonder if his game has taken over Earth. He tries to check his inventory and skills, but they're both locked since he realizes he's just an NPC. Plus, he can't switch professions, which is a bummer. He feels disappointed that he's just a peasant and a game designer, so he doesn't get a player identity. Then there's a knock at the door. Ma Chun comes in and he quickly pulls the blanket over himself. She tells him to stop pretending like he's still watching TV and hands him some apples. Shang grins and asks her why she's here. She explains that the hospital let her know about him. Otherwise, she wouldn't have bothered. Shang tells her she's always the best to him. She adds she was worried that if he died, who would pay the rent? The little girl wakes up and spots Shang in front of her. She runs up and hugs him excitedly, saying that Dad is awake. Ma Chun hears this and looks surprised. A bit annoyed, she asks if he really has a kid. Shang quickly explains how he met her. Ma Chun realizes the girl might have lost her memory and wants to help by registering her as a missing child. She tells Shang to watch her until her parents show up. He immediately asks Ma to lower his rent, but she pulls out some medical bills totaling $8,000. She adds she was worried that if he died, who would pay the rent, and says that she will, but he needs to pay those first. Shang is taken aback by how high the bills are. After everything went down, humans tried using nukes on the skyline tree in that huge hole but couldn't take down the monsters. Instead of winning, they lost the sky and half their land. Now the only hope for humanity is the players. Fast forward 6 months and Shang Go is home preparing his stuff for the grasslands. Meng, with her big shield, is still calling him Papa. Shang thinks it's adorable and tells her she is a good girl. Shang also puts his name and picture online to find Meng's real parents. Some people reach out, wanting to adopt her, but Shang isn't having any of it as he thinks they're not right for her. One guy even claims to be Meng's uncle and says her parents had a terrible accident, but he doesn't know that Meng isn't her actual name. So Shang reports all these fake relatives to the cops, leading them to catch many kidnappers. After everything that went down, it's been 6 months and Meng still hasn't regained her memory. Her parents haven't come to take her home either, but she's a great kid and greatly helps out around the place. Occasionally, Ma shows up to remind them about their debt. They still owe a ton of money. There was a time when Shang almost sent her to an orphanage, but he changed his heart and brought her back home. This fantasy world has 2 main monster zones, like underground monsters that are super strong and wild monsters that aren't as tough. Shang goes to a grassy area near S City with his stuff and starts hunting horn rabbits. He uses his shield to defend himself and a spade to take them out. Suddenly, a notification pops up saying he's killed 10,000 horn rabbits and earned the title of Rabbit Hunter. As a game designer, Shang has put together storylines for players and plenty for NPCs. That Rabbit Hunter title is meant for NPCs. In the story, a regular NPC is supposed to become a hero in this fantasy realm. Once he activates a hidden plot, he's supposed to team up with players to take down the Demon Lord. Shang spots this NPC and decides to deal with him and take his place. He tries to convince him he's just an NPC and can't be a player no matter what. Plus, he tries to stop him from hunting those adorable rabbits. But nothing seems to work and the NPC keeps going after them. Shang eventually eliminates this NPC by luring a group of horn rabbits with carrots and digging a hole to attract a giant armored wild boar to the grassy area. Once the NPC vanishes from the grassland, Shang turns to becoming a hero. In the S City player lobby, many players hang out when Shang walks in with dead horn rabbits. Some people start giving him a hard time about his nickname, the Rabbit Hunter, since they think he's a coward. He reminds himself that he's a game designer, not just some player. He heads over to an NPC named Lao, offering him a spicy rabbit head that boosts 5-minute speed. Lao tells him that his business isn't doing too hot. A stunning NPC named Li Qiuya emerges from nowhere. She's different from other NPCs because, according to the storyline, anyone who takes down 10,000 horn rabbits gets blessed by her and becomes a hero. When Qiuya approaches, Shang asks her for a blessing, but she scolds him for killing the cute rabbits. He begins to notice that something feels wrong with the plot. In a burst of anger, she grabs his hand and throws him to the ground while accusing him of already killing 10,000 rabbits. As she continues to beat him, people start whispering and questioning whether he is harassing her. Shang can't figure out why he's not becoming a hero. He thinks that maybe the story got messed up somehow. Sitting up, he starts yelling at the system for answers. Then the game tells him he's been cursed for hunting rabbits and is now cast out from the world for losing his human identity. He's set to become a demon and continue playing. When he checks his status window, he's relieved to see that demons have better stats than heroes. Shang tells Qiuya lovingly to stop hitting him, but she keeps going. His nose starts bleeding and she kicks him into a wall. After becoming a player, he realizes some of his previous abilities are unlocked. When he checks his inventory, he finds it way easier since he doesn't need big items for hunting. He gets more notifications about his demon imitation, transformation, and race talent skills at level 1, but he can't change his job until he hits level 10. The system asks if he wants to keep his name hidden for the announcement. He clicks yes, which lets all the players get the news. Everyone starts chatting about whether it's a trick. They're eager to congratulate him and hope to get cursed by the goddess, to help by registering her as a missing child. She tells Shang to watch her until her parents show up. Shang quietly thinks about thanking her too. Inside the Players Association building, the chairman of the S City Association Li Kui calls his secretary Li Bingyun about some strange stuff happening in the city. She informs him that the Lighting Dragon Guild cleared a B-rank underground dungeon and mentions that they haven't had any contact with the goddess. Also, the Cloud Soar and Goat Guilds haven't attacked any dungeons lately. Lei then asks if anything's been going on in the player lobby. Li Bing replies that one player ticked off an NPC and is getting stomped for trying to hunt rabbits. Lei asks if that player is Shang Go, and Li Bing wonders why he's so interested in him. Lei tells Li Bing to track him down and get him to join the logistics team if he fears dungeons. Li Bing agrees to handle it. Shang is back in the S City grasslands, hunting horned rabbits again. One of the rabbits goes after him, but he takes it down and scores some EXP. Instead of running away from the bunch of rabbits, he decides to take them on for more EXP. Now that he is a demon, he is faster, making the rabbits move slowly. He even makes fun of their slowness since he can read their moves easily. While he's at it, he levels up to 2. Shang activates his race skill named Demon Imitation, which stuns all the rabbits around him since they're knocked out cold. Shang has been on a roll since he started using his demon skills, hunting rabbits to rack up those experience points. But as he levels up, the EXP from low-level monsters starts drying up. So, he needs to move on to tougher rivals. When he put this game together, Shang remembers that players could only boost specific attributes based on their character type. So, warriors pump up their strength, assassins sharpen their senses, and magicians boost their wisdom. He thinks about what to add to his skills but spots a huge beast in the distance. It's the Horned Rabbit King, sitting pretty at level 10. Shang remembers it's a real pain for new players thanks to its tough skin and speed. The best way to take it down is with a bow, so he decides to ramp up his agility. Shang keeps telling himself he's not just an ordinary guy anymore, as he has demon powers and a body stronger than your typical newbie. He can't help but feel a bit let down about how he ended up like this. He's a demon player fighting for his kind's pride, but then he panics and starts shouting that he was just joking. There's no way he's taking on those rabbits with a king like that. The Horned Rabbit King is furious and starts chasing him down. It lunges at him with this crazy hopping dash. Still, Shang manages to dodge all the hits, thanks to his awesome agility. In a rage, the Horned Rabbit King calls a bunch of smaller rabbits to go after Shang. While running for his life, Shang warns everyone else to leave. A nearby group of players catches wind of the Horned Rabbit King. It gets super excited because it drops rare tools when defeated. But the next thing they know, they're all running for their lives together. He makes up some excuse about needing to feed his kid and bails. His friends are amazed, yelling about how he can run that fast. The girl yells that she'll take Shang down if she sees him next time. Shang walks into his house. Meng runs to him and hugs him while saying that Dad is back. He is curious about what she has been doing, and she tells him the landlady gave her a picture book. After adopting Meng, Ma Chun often swings by to help take care of her. Sometimes, she reminds Shang not to do anything weird with little Meng. Their stomachs growl, so Shang figures he'll whip up some fried rice. He's pretty good at making different kinds of fried rice now that he's a dad. But as he checks the pantry and fridge, he realizes they're out of rice and eggs. Meng notices they have no food and quickly says she's not hungry anymore. It makes Shang think he's been feeding her all sorts of weird food combos like mustard rice, porridge, and bread. He feels bad and thinks Meng deserves better, so he asks if she wants fried chicken. She excitedly says yes, but then she changes her mind, worrying that they won't be able to pay the rent if they spend money on food. Shang remembers he still owes 3 months of rent, maintenance, and medical fees. But when he checks his bank account, he tells Meng they can have a feast. He says goodbye to being broke and orders a family meal from a restaurant. After that disaster, people started treating players like celebrities. They've got strength, healing powers, and tons of cash, which excites the crowd. With their player status, they can venture into dungeons that drop monster crystals. Different types of crystals can be traded for serious money. Shang daydreams about hitting it rich this way, especially now that he's a player. When the delivery guy knocks on the door, it's great news as their meal has finally arrived. Shang and Meng are almost in tears because they're so happy to have a good meal after ages. As Shang watches Meng sleep, he tucks her in. She giggles, saying how awesome the French fries were. Back at his computer, Shang checks out the latest buzz on the game forum. There's a post about the recent Horned Rabbit King attack, and it's a relief to see that everyone came out okay since no one died. But that thought makes him feel guilty, wondering what would have happened if it was different. He then scrolls through the top and hot posts sections. Accidents happen and some players end up hurt. A news channel even talks about some players who died, with survivors saying it all went down because they relied too much on a dungeon guide. They're questioning whether God's guide is any good. Shang feels overwhelmed. It's a tough blow, and now there's a new multi-level dungeon and a new boss to deal with. But the blame seems to land on the game's system, which added extra content that threw everyone off. After this whole mess, Shang decides it's best not to post more guides on the forum. The next day, Shang heads back to Greenland and complains about being broke. He shouts that he can go without meals, but can't stand the thought of Meng being hungry. He grinds from level 6 to level 10 to take on a mission to change his profession. He dives into the underground dungeon to snag some magic crystals. He spots the armored wild boars, which are all huddled together and don't drop any crystals. Shang explains why most players steer clear of them. They don't offer good rewards, but there's a secret bonus. So he starts taking them out one by one to hit level 10, and he manages to do it pretty quickly. Out of nowhere, tougher boars show up and start chasing him down. Shang realizes he messed up and bolts for it. Suddenly, he gets a notification that demon imitation skill has been set and decides it's time to fight back. Shang activates his skill and stuns all the armored boars nearby, leaving them unconscious. After that, he returns to work by killing them off and finally reaches level 10. It takes him longer, but he finally gets the profession change mission. Now, he has to clear the Demon Wolf dungeon on the northern side of the Skyline tree within an hour. The game starts, letting him know that the Demon Wolf dungeon is an E-level one. In this new fantasy world, there are two kinds of dungeons. The first one is fixed underground dungeons where monsters just hang out in one spot and can't move around. Once you clear it, it resets. The second type is random underground dungeons that pop up in random locations through a space crack. If you don't clear these dungeons in time, the monsters break free and start causing chaos outside. Shang feels wiped out since the mission to change professions is super tough, and the system seems to be targeting him. After dropping a nuclear weapon, the Skyline tree forms a defense shield that blocks all tech. Cars and jets that get too close just shut down and burn up. No signals can get through the shield, and the only way to travel nearby is on horse carriages provided by management, which you don't have to pay for. Sitting in one of those carriages, Shang sets off. Taking the beautiful prairie, he realizes that nature is better off without humans. When he arrives, he sees a bunch of players already gathered there. Some have stopped leveling up and are carrying others around to make cash. Players shout offers, saying they'll trade crystals and tools for those looking to level up, insisting they need just one more person for their team. Shang thinks about jumping in with one of those groups since the mission needs to be finished in under an hour, but their prices are insane for just one spot. Then he spots the group he ran into in Greenland when they were battling horned rabbits a few days earlier. They've got better levels and tools. A red-haired dude walks over, but Shang looks away, trying to avoid them. When the guy asks to join, he introduces himself as a miner while wearing a mask. Miners are those who enter dungeons mainly to gather crystals and don't fight directly. They offer a deal where tools will be split among 4, but crystals will be shared equally, including him. Shang wonders if they just didn't recognize him. He steps forward and agrees to the arrangement. They dive into the wolf dungeon and start making their way through it. Unfortunately, they can't use flashlights because the Skyline tree blocks those. Luckily, Shang's demon powers let him see better in the dark. One of the boys spots some crystals, but wolves suddenly appear out of nowhere. The red-haired guy yells to grab their attention so the others can attack. The wolves charge at them, but they fight back, taking down the wolves. After clearing that out, they move on again. The raid leader tells Shang to hang back and focus on mining since things are getting dangerous up front. Shang notices that even though the group has decent tools, they won't be able to wrap up the raid in an hour. He discovers where the boss is in this dungeon and starts digging to reach it. When he jumps down the hole, he runs into an armored wolf that immediately attacks him. In a pinch, he pulls a horned rabbit from his inventory, because he knows underground dungeons don't have great food options and wolves can't resist rabbits. He feeds the rabbit to the wolf and takes advantage of the distraction. He hits it in the belly, taking it down. After that, he gets some points and magic crystals. He glances back at his crew and thinks he can level up here, but he notices a bunch of armored wolves closing in because of the rabbit's scent. Desperate, he grabs the rope and climbs back up. While he teases the wolves to keep them at bay, he realizes they're heading toward his group instead. Feeling guilty, he figures they'll manage after surviving the last fight. The group starts battling the wave of wolves, but they're taking hits. Xiao is confused about all the wolves, and Yun starts to notice that these wolves are going wild for some reason. The leader tries to calm everyone down, telling them not to freak out. He instructs Yun to heal Xiao while little Shi starts flinging explosive fireballs. Yun wonders if they're cursed since they first got hurt, and now they're dealing with these crazy wolves in a so-called E-level dungeon. Little Shi insists there are too many enemies, and they must fall back. As she prepares for a big explosion, the captain tells them to retreat and cover little Shi. Unfortunately, they're heavily outnumbered and surrounded, so it looks bad. They're puzzled about why there's a second-floor gatekeeper chilling on the first floor. Meanwhile, Shang happily digs away to reach the boss's room below. Suddenly, he hears the wolves roar and thinks his team has some good tools to take down demons. But he decides to check it out because his team is in a tight spot thanks to him. He figures he'll try to lure the demon wolf lord away with all the wolves closing in on them. Just then, he spots a bright red light flashing out. In this tough spot, surrounded by wolves everywhere, the group leader pulls out his Fire Lizard Madness Flame Dagger, which boosts the wolves' power. The catch? Once it's used, it disappears. Yun complains about losing half a year's worth of savings and worries that people will mock them for using the dagger, and realizes they're probably the first group to use a D-rank artifact in an E-rank dungeon. Sean goes back to dig a hole leading to the boss's room with only half an hour before the professional change mission ends. Once inside, he faces two bosses: the double-head wolf Thors and half-beast man, Luca. Sean remembers an Easter egg he put in the game that if a player gets to the boss room without opening the main door, they can sneak in without waking the sleeping bosses. So, he pulls out a roasted pig from his inventory and sprinkles it with strong sleeping pills and sleeping mushroom powder to knock them out. He then dashes off. Suddenly, one of the wolf heads wakes up, spots the pork, and chows down. It makes the other head furious, leading to a fight between them. Shang hopes they don't wake up the bosses. Thankfully, the sleep effect kicks in quickly, and the beast falls asleep. Now that double-head wolf Thors is down, Shang focuses on Luca. He knows the beast guy isn't as strong as the demon wolf, but the large axe he wields and its tornado/dance move makes him dangerous. As Shang goes for the axe, he realizes he needs to be level 25 to use it. He feels frustrated, thinking all his effort is for nothing. Before long, Luca wakes up and lunges at him. While trying to dodge, Shang keeps the axe in his inventory. He starts thinking about how to best tackle this demon. Attacks keep coming at him and he's barely managing to avoid them. Finally, he decides it's time to act. He bolts to a safe distance and downs all the buffing items in his inventory, toolsing up to attack quickly before time runs out for the mission. The beast man lands a punch on Shang, but he blocks it with his shovel and quickly counters. The damage he does to the beast man is barely noticeable, but with some teamwork, they can easily take him down. Unfortunately, it is just Shang facing off against this boss alone, and he doesn't have time to mess around. He definitely underestimates him at first. The beast man picks up a massive rock and hurls it at Shang. He doesn't see it coming and gets hit, leading to a big drop in his HP. Realizing that the game might have changed the boss's fight pattern, Shang is thrown off since he isn't used to these mechanics. To his shock, the beastman picks up the sleeping double-headed wolf and smacks it around to wake it up for help. Seriously, what a cowardly move. Shang opens up his attributes and thinks he can't let that happen. He decides to pump all his unused attribute points into agility, a bold gamble. Feeling confident, he charges at the beastman with his shovel. He goes for a headshot, a distraction as he aims to extinguish the torches instead. Thanks to his demon eyes, he can see perfectly in the dark. The beastman gets confused, struggling to see anything. Shang sneaks up behind him for an attack, but he senses it and blocks. No worries, as Shang has another move lined up. The beastman tries to swing back, but Shang dodges, hitting all the weak spots to pin him down. He thinks sneak attacks in the dark are really working in his favor. As he keeps attacking, the beastman grabs a chain and swings it wildly. Shang isn't expecting that and gets slammed into the wall. He quickly grabs some healing items from his inventory, but the beastman comes at him again, knowing exactly where he is. The beastman has flipped into berserk mode and zeroed in on Shang as his target. He throws a punch that Shang tries to block, but it shatters his shovel and sends him crashing into a wall. Gasping for air and bleeding, Shang knows he can't take another hit or he's toast. When the beastman launches another attack, Shang barely manages to dodge it. He confidently declares that he can also go berserk and decides to use his secret weapon, the Demon Race Transformation. This move transforms him into a demon and boosts all his stats by 20 points, though it only lasts 29 seconds. Shang grows bigger and stronger, making the beastman start to sweat. The beastman tries throwing rocks at him, but it's useless. Shang asks if he's ready for an attack, and then rains down and punches on the beastman until he's a mess. He knows he has to take out boss Luca in 30 seconds, or things could also turn sour for him. Shang's crew has defeated all the wolves on the first floor and feels relieved. Suddenly, they hear some commotion from below, leading them to think a monster fight is happening. As they go to the boss room, they get a notification saying the beastman Luca was defeated. They're not thrilled since they've cleared the dungeon without taking down the boss. Back in the boss room, Shang gets notifications about leveling up. He wins against the beastman and completes his demon profession change mission. He checks his inventory for the beastman loot, including a high-quality necklace. He is thrilled about the perfect quality crystals he got from the boss. There are 2 types of crystals, and the pure blue ones are the most valuable. Shang starts dreaming about throwing a feast with Meng with all the cash he can make from these crystals, and thinks about getting a stronger weapon made. While he chills beside the dead half-beast guy, Shang spots someone pushing open the stone door to the boss room. According to the game rules, the double-headed wolf will wake up no matter what. Shang rolls his eyes at the game settings and slips out before Thors catches on. He heads back up the hole, ditching the group to handle Thor's since he already took down the Beastman boss. Once the group enters the stone door, the boss is already gone. They're scratching their heads, wondering how the Beastman got taken out so easily. They start throwing around theories like maybe Thor's turned on his boss. Thor's catches sight of them and looks pretty ticked off. After some back and forth, they manage to take down the double-headed wolf. Xiao is on edge since this dungeon has brought them bad luck, leading to negative credit, losing an artifact and just scoring some E-rank crystals and a bunch of junk that's not worth much. As they mope about not getting anything useful, a notification pops up, saying they just broke the record for clearing the dungeon the fastest. It asks if they want to announce it globally. Captain jumps at the chance and names the squad the Flame Lizard Squad. Everyone in the group gets the title Wolf Hunter. There's talk about using an artifact, but the previous team finished it in just an hour and a half. The squad is pumped since they're famous and can get into some good guilds. They also realize the Wolf Hunter title gives them a nice attack boost. They return to the entrance, where Xiao runs into Shang and calls him out for not digging up enough crystals, definitely not enough to cover the potions they used. Shang says sorry, but Xiao grabs all the crystals, claiming he can use the Wolf Hunter title. They get ready to leave the dungeon, but little Shi stops Shang and hands him his share of the crystals. Shang thanks her and asks for her name and number. She introduces herself as Chuijin Shi and, avoiding the phone exchange, nudges him to take off from the dungeon. Outside the dungeon doors, many people are waiting, probably wondering if the group is about to cash in on their rewards. As soon as they step out, folks start coming up with various questions and offers. But Shang isn't a fan of crowds, so he covers his face and sneaks away from the scene. He finds a quiet spot and pulls up his attributes bar to change his profession. He has 3 choices like the Demon Warrior, about strength and defense. The Demon Hunter is known for quickness and attack power. And the Demon Warlock can brew strong healing potions using powerful souls. Zhuang is torn because he likes all of them, so he asks the system if he can pick more than one. The answer is that he'll need a hero certificate to do that. Feeling annoyed, he decides to go with the Demon Hunter since it fits his current skills best. The system tells him the switch is successful and he gets a new skill called Hunt Mark, which lets him mark a target and sense its location. Plus, it doubles his attack points. He's stoked about this new ability since it will help a ton when tackling dungeons alone. At the Player Association Managing Center, there's a conversation happening about the Goddess Martial Artist Guild. They're fighting against dark elves west of the Skyline tree. Unfortunately, 40 players have lost their lives. On top of that, the Goddess Martial Artist is missing, and the co-leader is gone too. Chairman Lei is frustrated and asks Secretary Li Bing how many people are in the loop. She mentions they're keeping it under wraps to prevent chaos and panic. She adds that the higher-ups want them to rally other player guilds to help out on the battlefield. Meanwhile, Shang leaves the area in a horse-drawn carriage, heading out to the S-City outskirt grasslands. He returns to a spot with a mobile signal and gets messages from Ma Chun. Meng is sick, and they're both in the hospital right now. Shang rushes to the hospital room and asks about Meng. Ma Chun tells him to keep it down since Meng just fell asleep. Later, she explains that Meng has a high fever and questions where he's been for the last couple of days. He tells her he's been making money and can finally cover the rent, medical bills, and other costs. Ma Chun seems a bit suspicious. He then pulls out some crystals he mined from dungeons and suggests she sell those. Ma Chun is taken aback and asks if he's been going into dungeons. He reassures her that he wants to be a miner. At that moment, a nurse knocks on the door and asks for the patient's parents. They look at each other, but Shang decides to talk to the doctor about Meng. The doctor advises him to brace himself, explaining that Meng has a lot of magical elements in her body, and she's been diagnosed with magic element syndrome. Magic element syndrome is basically the new cancer for this magical age. Since the game launched in the real world, magical elements have mixed with the air and our bodies can absorb them. This can lead to serious health issues. Symptoms include high fevers, extreme tiredness, loss of appetite, and strange black dots on the skin. The doctor says that regular medicine won't help Meng, and even protective cures are useless since she has 10 times more magical elements than an average patient. The doctor thinks her survival is already a miracle. After stepping outside, he starts contemplating a plan to save Meng. The only way to do that is by raiding burial grounds, where he might find lasso tears. It is a rare item that can cure anything. The good news is the requirement for this dungeon is that it needs to be raided by a solo player, which is ideal since Shang is all set and ready for this challenge after his recent upgrades. After chatting with the doctor, Shang heads back to Meng and Ma Chun is waiting to ask about the situation. Shang brushes it off, saying it's just a regular fever and mentioning that he doesn't have enough cash for medical bills right now, so he needs to make more money. Ma Chun tells him she already chipped in $3,000 and delayed his rent payment since he should really focus on the hospital costs. Her kindness impresses Shang, but Ma Chun insists it's just for Meng. She notices how dirty he is and tells him to shower while she looks after Meng. Shang makes an excuse about it being for mining and goes off to clean up. In the shower, Shang realizes his body has changed since he joined the demon race, and now he has this wild urge to wreck things. Even though he's at level 13, his stats are better than most level 20 players. He can easily handle D-rank dungeons thanks to his hunt mark skill, but he knows he needs to boost his skills for a C rank. Afterwards, he heads over to Chang'an Street, known for its weapon trading. He spots some guy buying a mystical dog, but the way to tame it is brutal as electrocution is involved. Shang can't help but criticize that. He thinks they can't change human nature before moving on to the Magic Crystal Exchange store. He notices magic crystals are losing value there since more players are finding them. Shang pulls up his inventory and shows the clerk his D and E rank crystals. She questions if he really wants to trade them. He mentions he has a pure D rank crystal left. Another player walks up and praises the D rank crystal. He said that people would have been fighting over it 6 months ago. Regardless, he makes the trade and pockets the cash. Next, he checks out the Lao Chao weapon store, where he sees fancy weapons like the Windfrost longsword and the Water Crystal dagger. But he can't afford anything and leaves empty-handed. As he walks outside, a roadside vendor catches his attention with a unique sword named the Balder Cursed Sword. It has 3 active effects, and Shang is keen to buy it. However, the dealer slaps a crazy price on it and says it's not meant for humans. Thrilled at being a demon, Shang quickly decides he can't get caught and trades it for the axe he snagged from a half-beast man. Both sides are happy with the swap, and Shang thinks about how the boss would have fainted if he knew he was a demon, while the merchant smugly comments that the axe isn't too shabby. Finally, he returns to the hospital and tells the receptionist to upgrade their room to a VIP sick room. Ma Chun gets a message about a bank transfer from Shang, who just settled all his pending dues and bills. He lets her know he'll be out for a few days and that she should keep an eye on Meng. She can't help but think he's lying since a regular fever shouldn't need a VIP sick room. Meanwhile, the Great Rift Valley is about 100 kilometers from S-City. However, it's still within the Skyline Trees area, a bit further out, which means driving's a no-go there. So Shang has to trek 30 kilometers to reach his destination. He pulls out his map to find Darren Village, which is nearby. He remembers that the burial ground should be deep in the mist fog forest, and that is why he's headed to Darren Village. It's a popular spot for high-rank players and a key supply station for the West Defense area. In the village, a squad of players is haggling with a villager NPC at a barn over the mission. Xiao Hao from the group is furious because the NPC is asking for an outrageous price for a beautiful girl for the mission. He scammed them out of their food resources. Shang shows up and completely ignores the squad. He pulls an erotic magazine from his inventory and hands it to the NPC. He even offers more magazines, and the NPC requests some wine, which Shang gives him. Hao is shocked at how much the wine costs. The NPC chugs down the drink quickly. He then asks Shang to write a love letter to Juliet to see if he'll give him the mission after that. Keeping his cool, Shang takes a piece of paper and starts writing while the squad watches. Juliet's husband threatens him to back off when he delivers the letter. Shang is annoyed at how games are designed this way. Seeing Shang's effort, the NPC finally offers him the mission. It's to find the remains of a drunken man's son in the burial area. Shang takes the mission, gets the map, and receives the undead bell for emergencies. The players watching from the start try to convince Shang to team up with them, but he turns them down. As he heads towards the burial site, a group of cloaked guys standing by the bar claim that the mission and the tools will be theirs once Shang leaves the village. As Shang heads out of the village, some players think about tagging along to see what kind of mission he's on. A middle-aged guy and a young girl are watching him, and the girl asks her uncle if they can follow Shang for the historical rank mission. She ends up talking to one of the creepy and cloaked guys, who calls her pretty in a way that makes her uncomfortable. Her uncle jumps in, saying she's too young for that, and the girl calls the guys evil. One of the hooded men even gives her a smack for interrupting. After that, the group of hooded guys starts chasing after Shang. The uncle warns the girl to steer clear of them next time. She's curious why he seems so chill with those bad guys, especially since he's ranked higher. He tells her that she doesn't know the ins and outs of the Great Rift Valley yet since she's new here. He explains that the valley is a crime hotspot, far away from S-City. It's not monsters that are the real threat here, but it's this gang called the Poisonous Snakes. When she asks why the association isn't doing something about them, Uncle Shen says death is a regular thing around here. He adds that being naive and going solo could lead to a quick end for players who take on risky missions like Shang. Meanwhile, Shang reaches the entrance of the Mist Fog Forest and spots the poisonous snakes lurking nearby. He figures they'll go after him when he steps into the forest. When he makes a move, the fog makes it tough to see. The poisonous snakes launch an attack, but the archer misses his shot. One guy can't help but tease him about his aim. A caster steps up and unleashes an inferno spell at Shang, but he dodges and takes cover behind a tree. Shang starts to wonder how they've pinpointed his location. The archer starts mocking his buddy again. Even though Shang is sprinting away, he suddenly halts when his instincts tell him there's danger around. He activates his demon eyes to get a better view. Out of nowhere, a stealthy attacker drops down from a tree and tries to ambush him, but Shang is taken aback when he sees him right through the stealth trick. The boss shouts for them to keep attacking him. Another archer, Arrow Rainstorm, unleashes a barrage of arrows during the fight. Shang deflects a lot with his blade, even though a few still find their mark. He realizes they're working together really well to bring him down. He makes a run for it strategically, but soon stops with a grin in front of this huge tree. The archer asks why he's not running anymore. Shang teases him and asks why he should be scared if many idiots chase him. When the archer aims for his head, Shang dodges, and the arrow slams into the tree behind him. Then, out of nowhere, the tree starts to move. The tree is a wild boss named the Bloodthirsty Demon Tree. It locks on to the poisonous snake gang, and suddenly they're all freaked out. The archer yells that the tree seems to have its sights set on him. The Bloodthirsty Demon Tree awakens, and the poisonous snake group can only watch in horror as they enter its trap. Archer yells for help, but the others turn on him, leaving him behind. The tree strikes, impaling him with its roots. The group mutters that whoever is closest to the tree will take the full force of its wrath. As the tree slowly drains him, leaving nothing but a dry skeleton, so the rest of the group seizes the moment. It makes a run for it, desperate to save themselves. Shang looks frustrated at his team as they bail on each other to save themselves. As they sprint away, it hits them that the boss is actually going after someone else, not Shang. Suddenly, the demon tree's roots pop out of the ground and start going after one of the members. He yells for help, but Brother Zhang, who has a stealth ability, just covers himself and takes off. In a surprising turn, though, the tree goes after Brother Shang while he's hidden and drains his life away. The last two members of the poisonous snake are left standing trying to figure out how to survive. They realize the boss isn't going after the players with aggro, but is likely targeting anyone moving. That explains why Shang hasn't been attacked by the tree. He probably knows how this boss fights. Xiao Wu, one of the two, starts to run, but his buddy stops him and tells him to hit Shang with the flame snake instead. He gets ready to attack and aims at Shang, but Shang dodges just in time, nearly hitting the tree instead. Seeing this, Xiao Wu quickly changes the direction of his attack, sending it into the sky to avoid getting hit by the tree. The group starts to wonder why Shang isn't being targeted, even though he's moving around. It's pretty confusing. Shang then props them up to help them quickly figure out the tree's attack pattern. He pulls a bow and arrow from his inventory and shoots at Xiao Wu. Xiao Wu spots it right away and dodges it with a burst fireball. His partner warns him that Shang's trying to trick him into intentionally making these moves. Still, Xiao Wu messes up and accidentally launches a fireball at the boss, catching its attention and putting the two of them in the spotlight. Shang pops out from behind the tree and starts firing arrows at them again. But this time, the comrade deflects every shot with his sword. He's had enough of this, so he goes full berserker mode and charges at Shang with everything he's got, trying to show him how much stronger he is. One of the poisonous snake group members stands there, wondering if there's a spot around Shang where the boss can't attack him since the tree hasn't gone after him. He warns Shang not to get too comfortable hiding behind the boss. At the same time, Shang can't help but notice how strong this guy is since he's fighting the boss like it's an even match. But with the guy in berserker mode, whose stats get a 50% boost, it only lasts 5 minutes. The guy charges straight at Shang, ready to go all in. Shang figures the enemy might be using some sort of artifact. His eyes lock onto the Flame Dragon Roar artifact in the enemy's hands. Shang quickly targets it and blasts the artifact. Back in Darren Village, people spot the explosion from the forest and immediately assume some rich player triggered it. The girl and her uncle also see the blast from the entrance of the Mist Fog Forest. The girl wonders if Shang's been killed. Her uncle grabs her hand and starts pulling her back, saying it's too dangerous to go any further. On the battlefield, the enemy lies on the ground while Shang sits down and sips water. He reflects on how he would have been a goner if he hadn't managed to escape that suicidal blast in time. The artifact was so powerful that it completely obliterated the demon tree. The enemy is dead, with his inventory scattered everywhere. Shang starts going through his items and crystals. As he approaches the enemy's body, he notices the guy move. He quickly dodges a surprise attack. The enemy asks how Shang figured it out. Shang explains that their inventory is always neatly arranged when a player dies, and not randomly thrown around like it was here since he was trying to bait him into a trap. The enemy gets up and laughs, saying that even dead people know that little trick, calling Shang more of a poisonous snake than they are. Shang just shrugs it off, saying he's the game designer. Then he asks how the enemy survived the explosion. The guy admits he used another artifact, the Flame Dragon Protection. Still, he wasted it on himself instead of the goddess martial artist. He then asks why the boss didn't target Shang, and Shang reveals that both he and the tree are from the demon race. The enemy laughs, but then gets serious, saying it'll be easier to find answers from his corpse. Shang smirked and used the hunt mark on him, quickly discovering that the enemy had suffered critical damage from the explosion. The enemy feels he's being marked out of nowhere and starts overthinking. He wonders if Shang is stronger than he looks since his rank isn't even 20. But before he can process it, Shang transforms into his demon form and finishes him. In his final moments, the enemy asks who Shang is since he's clearly not human. Shang simply answers he is a demon. After taking down the player, Shang gets a notification that he's leveled up. He realizes that killing players gives EXP and that his hunt mark skill can be upgraded. He wonders if it's all because of his demon nature, but then thinks about dark elves and asks if that's the case, why they can't level up. Shang starts collecting the items dropped by the dead members of the poisonous snake group. His attention gets caught by a particular sword named the Vibrator Metal Longsword, which boosts damage with vibrations. Shang worries that only berserkers and similar classes can use it, not someone like him. He picks up the transformation ring from his enemy, Wu Tu. This ring allows a player to equip 2 artifacts at once. Shang is stunned as it's A-rank gear, which should only be found in B-rank dungeons or higher. Deep in the forest, the 9th Attack Force Squad of the Green Goat Guild is heading toward the explosion's location. They come across the 4 corpses of the poisonous snake members and conclude that a wild boss must have killed them. The squad leader spots a familiar face among the bodies that is the body of Tianye, guild leader Zhang's little brother. The squad starts whispering that he doesn't like taking part in dungeons, so he joins the poisonous snake group instead. The leader figures that the guild leader must have given him some rare gear to prevent him from being taken down by a wild boss. One of the soldiers reports that someone has looted their inventories, which leads the leader to deduce that 3 of the members were killed by the boss. Still, Zhang Tianye has cut with a sharp weapon. The leader orders the squad to alert the guild and stay on the lookout for any suspicious individuals in the area. Meanwhile, Shang reaches the burial dungeon and enters. He starts exploring the first floor, the corpse corridor. As he moves forward, he notices that the bones on the ground rise up as high-level skeleton soldiers. Shang curses the system for messing with their levels and making them tougher. A skeleton warrior attacks, and he just manages to block the hit. He wonders how strong these skeletons are. At the same time, the skeleton spearman prepares to strike, forcing Shang to leap out of the way. But the skeleton archer marks him and almost lands a hit, which he barely dodges. Shang decides to fight back using a trick of his own, targeting the skeleton warrior's weak point and taking it down. He knows he doesn't have time to waste, so he focuses on the archer next. As the archer shoots, Shang unleashes a mana attack and decapitates it. Once the skeletons are dealt with, he gets notifications about EXP gains and skill upgrades. Shang pauses momentarily, impressed by his new weapon since it's doing more damage with its special effects than his usual weak point attacks. He decides to quickly level up by wiping out all the enemies in the area, saying that defeating skeletons after the enemy's attack is easy, but he spots some skeleton summoning magicians hiding behind a wall just then. He grabs them, ties them up, and orders them to summon more skeletons so he can keep grinding for EXP. Shang takes down all the skeleton demons and has been grinding for a while now. His level hits 20 and his hunt mark skill levels up. Checking his status window, he realizes his attributes are already higher than the average level 30 player, thanks to his demon race buffs. He feels confident he could take Wu-Tu head-on with these stats. Shang then turns his attention to the tied-up skeleton summoning magicians. But to his surprise, they all commit suicide right in front of him. Not letting it get to him, he heads toward the next floor. He pushes open the door and steps into the dungeon, only to find the remains of Kashande, the drunkard's son. As he explores further, he stumbles upon an army of level 37 armored knights. On top of that, a skeleton lord of unknown level sits on a throne and commands them. Suddenly, the door behind him slams shut, trapping him on Death Plaza's second floor. Panicked, he wonders if the boss is on the third floor, but then he curses the system for changing the map and the monsters. This is no longer the dungeon he designed. The armored skeletons launch their attack on Shang, and he tries to block their blows and counterattack, but their armor is too tough for him to do any real damage. He quickly uses Hunt Mark on one of the knights, only to be shocked since there are no weak points. He realizes, with growing fear, that they might be wearing the netherweave armor of the elf tribe. The knights attack again, and Shang barely manages to block their strikes. He realizes these skeletons are way tougher than the ones on the first floor. He takes another hit, sending him crashing into the wall. He starts to think it is inevitable that the son of that drunkard will die here. The knights close in, and all he can think about now is how he will probably die. Shang reflects on how dangerous the dungeons are, and how they take players' lives without hesitation. After all these attacks, he's too drained to fight back. He thinks of Ma Chun and Meng and apologizes to them. A sudden notification pops up, saying his heart has stopped and his demon heart activates. On the brink of death. Moments ago, Shang suddenly fights back as the demon heart activates inside him. The demon heart boosts all his attributes by half, making him immune to fear. Shang realizes he can easily take down these knights with this new buff. As another one charges at him, he leaps, grabs its head, and slams it into the ground, instantly destroying it. But to his surprise, he doesn't gain any EXP. He soon discovers that these knights are Demon Lord puppets. They don't have weak points, and his sword can't do much damage to them. Shang realizes he's already in a fight with the boss and pulls out the vibrator metal longsword from his inventory. Filled with rage and no fear, he charges into the midst of the armored knights and cuts them down one by one. He's stronger than them now, and he fights through them fiercely until they're all gone. He then turns his gaze to the Demon Lord, who finally stands up from his throne to face Shang. The pressure from the boss is real, and Shang can feel it. The boss raises his sword and swings it with incredible force toward Shang. The slash cuts through the ground, sending dirt and debris flying everywhere. Shang immediately realizes there's a huge power gap between them. He starts wondering if he's still in a C-rank dungeon, and realizes the boss deliberately missed him with that attack. As he contemplates, he knows he cannot take on the skeleton boss, even with the demon heart and the undead bell. Then, the boss asks him if he's still human. After thinking about the curse from the goddess and Tianyi's death, Shang replies that he's no longer human. The boss responds that he doesn't need to kill a non-human, which makes Shang pause in confusion. The boss gets closer, says that Shang's body feels familiar, and asks him to open his inventory and show it to him. Shang starts showing the items, but nothing seems to connect. The boss then insists it's something from his body, and Shang reveals the Skyline Tree Key, the item the boss has been searching for 100 years. The game explains that the Skyline Tree Key is a sacred object protected by the elf tribe for generations. Shang realizes it's an SSS rank item, which dropped due to a game bug. He briefly considers trying to snatch the key away, but he knows he can't defeat the boss, so he lets that idea go. Another notification pops up, activating a main mission. It's called the Elf Prince Oseth Request, where the Skyline Tree is corrupted by evil energy, and the player must deliver the key to Elf King Nodo to prevent disaster. That's when Shang realizes the skeleton boss is actually an elf prince. Still, Shang accepts the mission and focuses on getting the key back first. In Skyline City, at the Royal Palace, the elf tribe celebrates Harvest Day, one of their most sacred occasions. Elf Prince Osset is enjoying the festivities. Meanwhile, in the Hall of Relics within the Royal Palace, one of the forest elves steals the Skyline Tree Key, causing the Skyline Tree's protective barrier to collapse. This sets off a war between the Dark Elves and the Forest Elves. Because of Osset's negligence, he's stripped of his title as Elf Prince and kicked out of the Skyline Tree. After this, Osset begins to reclaim the Skyline Tree Key. During his campaign in the Mist Forest, he and his troops are ambushed, leading to the death of everyone. But in that moment, Osset's soul is overtaken by evil energy. When he regains consciousness, he transforms into the Lord of the Burial Dungeon and is trapped in that place. He recalls that 20 years ago, he didn't want to kill a human, but the evil energy inside him forced him to. Shango finally understands why Prince Osset asked him about his humanity. He starts questioning this evil energy concept, which he never originally included in the game. The next moment, Shang remembers coming here to get the lasso tears for Ming. But Prince Osset casually mentions that he got bored one day and drank the bottle himself. Shang gets angry, ready to take it out on him. However, the prince tells him there's still another way to save someone and offers him the Roots Ring, which makes the wearer immune to all illnesses and diseases. Shang is overjoyed, realizing he got an even better item than the lasso tears. But in return for the ring, Prince Osset asks Shang to do him a favor. The prince asks Shang to use the undead bell on them because the souls of the people who followed him are stuck in the dungeon. Using the bell might free them by purging the evil energy from their bodies. Shang is shocked, saying they might disappear forever if the bell is used. The prince responds that they've already died once. Shang is torn because the bell is expensive and using it here might feel wasteful, but he knows he needs the ring to save Meng. But he decides to use the bell, freeing all the souls trapped in the dungeon. As each soul dissipates, one says farewell, and the prince bids them goodbye. All the souls vanish except Prince Osset's. Shang is surprised and asks him about his lingering existence. The prince reveals he's too powerful to be wiped out by the bell. Shang gets frustrated, realizing he won't get any loot if the boss doesn't die. He tells the prince he can't leave the dungeon unless defeated. The prince then uses his powers to open a transport gate for Shang to leave. He also gives Shang a letter to pass on to his father before Shang is teleported to the outside world. The prince starts reading the adult magazine Shang gave him and thinks about going out to enjoy the company of pretty girls. But then, he suddenly remembers that the transport gate sends him to a random location. After the goddess martial artist vanished, the Dark Elves broke through the first war line. They launched the most brutal assault in history against humanity. The war involved both human and non-human forces. During the battle, a griffin attacks Jiang Hao, who yells for help. Li Xiangyun, the second offensive team captain of the Goddess Martial Artist Guild, swoops in and saves him before slamming the griffin. Jiang hurriedly informs Li that Lu Xing and Jiang Zi were killed in the fight. Their efforts are pointless since the Dark Elves hide in the forest, using monsters to fight for them. Li insists they must hold the defense line until the Goddess Martial Artist returns. But frustrated, Jiang points out that she has been missing for over a month, and if she doesn't return, they are all doomed. Just then, petals begin falling from the sky. Jiang and Li turn to the skyline tree as its leaves shift to a deep red. Meanwhile, the Dark Elves signal their forces to retreat. While Jiang celebrates, Li remains wary and questions why the elves would back down when they clearly have the upper hand. Suddenly, the skyline tree's flowers sprout and launch seeds in all directions. Curious, Jiang picks one up and wonders what the tree threw their way. Li quickly warns him to step back, but before he can react, the seed glows bright red and explodes in his hands, leaving nothing behind. At the same time, all the other seeds detonate as well. Amidst the chaos, all Li can do is watch in grief and curse the Dark Elves. Meanwhile, Shang is finally transported from the burial dungeon to the deceased country. As he looks around, he notices the twisted roots of the mist tree surrounding him. From this, he realizes he landed on the skyline tree's lowest floor, the resting place of the elf tribe. This dungeon has the highest difficulty level, ranked A level, and is designed for a party of 20 players. Despite the danger, Shang moves forward. As he navigates the dungeon, a glowing embryo suddenly drops from the roots above, cracking open as a strange creature crawls out. Standing before him is a level 51 Death Elf warrior. The Death Elf crawls toward Shang, its twisted limbs moving unnaturally. Suddenly, one of its arms morphs into a blade, and it swings at him. Shang blocks the attack with his sword, immediately realizing the massive power gap between them. He quickly activates Hunt Mark, but is surprised since the Death Elf has no weak points. However, he notices a glowing red line extending from its back and figures that cutting it might be the key to defeating it. Without wasting time, he slashes at the Death Elf. He forces it back, then severs the red line. The creature collapses and Shang gains a solid amount of EXP for the kill. Then he remembers why the deceased country dungeon is so difficult since there's a time limit. It's a sacred resting place for the dead, and humans who stay too long will be consumed by it. If he doesn't clear it fast, he'll die. Before he can catch his breath, more embryos begin to crack open, releasing waves of death elves. If they attack all at once, he's doomed. As they rush toward him, Shang curses the skeleton prince for dropping him into this nightmare. Meanwhile, the skeleton prince flips through the magazine Shang gave him and suddenly sneezes. He pauses confusingly and wonders if skeletons can even sneeze. Shang fights off the relentless swarm in the dungeon and individually cuts down the undead elves. But then, he notices something wrong since his hand is moving independently. A strange virus is spreading through his body, threatening to take control of him. He'll be trapped in this dungeon if it fully takes over. Desperate, he pulls out the ring the skeleton prince gave him earlier. Since it's made from the roots of the skyline tree, it should protect him. He quickly slips it on, feeling the infection stop in its tracks. Gritting his teeth, he glares at the glowing embryos behind him. More enemies are coming. He unleashes his demonic form with no other choice, ready to fight them all head-on. Out of nowhere, a massive explosion erupts right in front of Shang. Stunned, he stares at the blast and tries to figure out what happened. Then, through the smoke and debris, a figure emerges that is the martial goddess herself. Shang can't believe his eyes. She's the last one he expected to see here. But then, a thought crosses his mind. Shouldn't she be on the front lines? What's she doing in this dungeon? Before he can say anything, the martial goddess strides toward him, weapons drawn and aimed straight at him. Shang freezes, but then it clicks as he's still in his demon form. To her, he looks like an enemy. She keeps her weapons trained on him momentarily, her sharp eyes studying him carefully. Suddenly, she lowers them. Shang watches in surprise as her expression shifts, as if something about him feels familiar. Almost like she's known him forever, even though she shouldn't. At the Player Managing Association building, Li Bingyun updates Lei Chu on the explosions near the skyline tree from the day before. The blasts left many association players injured. Meanwhile, things look grim on the Burning Land's front lines. The Goddess Martial Artist Clan, Lightning Dragon Guild, Green Sheep Guild, and Yunteng Guild have all suffered heavy losses. Many players are dead, while others completely lose the will to fight. Those who survived have retreated to Darren Village in the Great Rift Valley. If this continues, the explosions will reach Darren Village in 2 days and SE City in about 15. Soon, the entire 500-meter radius around the skyline tree will turn into a fiery wasteland. Lei asks Li Bingyun what the higher-ups have planned. She tells him their only directive is to do everything possible to stop the explosions. If that fails, they must evacuate S City immediately. Frustrated, Lei demands any news about the goddess martial artist, but Li has nothing to report. He gets up and says waiting for her is pointless. Instead, he orders her to notify all players that they will launch one final attack on the skyline tree the next day. In the deceased country, the goddess sniffs Shang all over, making him wonder if she plans to eat him. Instead, she simply asks if he has any food, saying she's starving from being here for so long. Just as his demon form fades away, she questions why he turned human. Shang explains that he was human, but was cursed by a goddess and became a demon. Shang wonders if hunger has made her lose her mind. He hands her some bread to test her, which she devours instantly. Watching her ridiculous behavior, he questions how someone like her became the martial goddess in the first place. She casually admits she has no idea. 6 months ago, she became the goddess martial artist when the game invaded Earth. Shang is stunned, but she responds to his thoughts before he can process it. She reveals her special passive skill since she can hear what people within 5 meters are thinking. This throws Shang off, and he instinctively steps back, realizing he can't let her find out he's the game's developer. Putting that aside, she asks if he knows the way out. She's been fighting here for over a month, but the monsters keep returning no matter how often she kills them. Shang is surprised she doesn't know about her own abilities. He explains that these creatures aren't truly alive, and that the only way out is to defeat the dungeon's boss. She asks if Shang knows anything about the boss since she hasn't encountered it yet. He tells her the boss is likely in a higher area. Without hesitation, she powers up and charges toward the ceiling. She attempts to break through but fails. Frustrated, she admits she isn't strong enough to break it. Shang explains that this is an A-rank dungeon, one of the hardest to clear. She can't even take it on alone. Suddenly, something crashes down behind him. It's an S-rank monster named Nodo Ordo, the former Elf King, corrupted by evil energy. He was transformed into the guardian of the deceased country. Seeing him, Shang can't help but wonder how much the system has changed his game. King Nodo steps forward and immediately accuses Shang of stealing from him. A system notification appears, prompting Shang to return the key to Elf King Nodo Ordo. He hands it over, and the king demands to know where he got it. Instead of answering directly, Shang gives him the letter from Osset, explaining that his son sent it to him. The goddess martial artist and Shang Go are suddenly teleported to the front lines near the skyline tree. Shang notices that the tree has bloomed and wonders why it happened, even though the key was with him the whole time. Amidst the chaos, the goddess approaches a wounded soldier, but his health is too low for healing. The soldier insists she shouldn't waste her energy on him, and heads to the skyline tree to help Captain, Thunder Armadillo, and the others. Shang urges her to move quickly, reminding her that no one can destroy the tree without the key. Without hesitation, she lifts Shang onto her lap and takes off quickly, telling him to hold tight. Shang is completely stunned by her strength. At the royal court of the skyline tree, members of the association and Thunder Armadillo, who wields the power of the lightning god and is the leader of S-City, are battling their way through the enemy. Using his lightning dragon fist, he strikes down dark elves. Meanwhile, the Yungtang clan leader Jiang Qi calls out to the elves, daring them to stop hiding and fight. Inside the barrier, the Dark Elf King, Nodo Luca, scoffs at the humans, confident they can't break through without the skyline tree key. Frustrated by the Elf King's arrogance, Jiang demands a fight, but the Dark Elf only mocks him further. At that moment, the goddess and Shang finally arrive. Everyone is shocked to see her return, and whispers quickly spread among the crowd. Spotting Shang with her, people start teasing him, calling him the rabbit hunter, and assuming she must have saved him on her way. Meanwhile, Shang swears to himself that he won't let her carry him again, as he is nearly shaken to death in her arms. Jiang rushes to meet the goddess and urges her to use her spear to destroy the barrier. From inside, the Dark Elf King sneers and asks how she managed to escape the deceased country, convinced she had no chance of defeating the king there. Nodo Luca's eyes lock onto the skyline tree key in Shang's possession. The crowd starts murmuring, wondering how Shang could stand a chance against the Dark Elves when even Armadillo couldn't defeat them. Sensing the threat, Nodo Luca immediately orders his elves to stop Shang, which ignites another intense battle between the Dark Elves and the human forces. Shang makes his way to the Saint Relic Hall of the Royal Court, where he carefully places the skyline tree key back in its original spot. As soon as he does, the game system recognizes him as the designer and prompts him to decide whether to stop the skyline tree. A second warning appears, stating that forcefully stopping it will completely destroy the tree. Without hesitation, Shang confirms his choice and selects yes to trigger its destruction. On the streets of S-City, people are confused about where all the petals are coming from, with the skyline tree glowing in the distance. A little girl says she plans to make a wreath out of the petals and give it to her dad, Li Jiangyun, the leader of the second offensive team. Ma Chung is anxiously worrying about Shang being in the hospital since it's been 2 weeks since he left. As for the tree's petals continue to fall until it's completely bare. Down by the base of the skyline tree, Jiang Qi, Thunder Armadillo, and the goddess martial artist are all attacking Nodo Luca, but he is still trapped inside the barrier. Luca mocks Armadillo, saying it's pointless for him to keep attacking because he's just a human and can't unlock the true power of the Thunder God. Armadillo punches again, creating a hole in the barrier and draining Luca's power. Suddenly, the barrier around him disappears, leaving him open to attack. The goddess makes her move, and Luca can't avoid her strike. The skyline tree is finally taken down and begins to collapse, putting everyone nearby in danger as the earth cracks open. A notification appears announcing that the skyline tree has fallen. Despite the danger, the humans celebrate their victory. Back in the S-City graveyard, family members and comrades of Li Jiangyun stand in mourning for the heroes who sacrificed their lives. During the events surrounding the skyline tree, 2,032 people gave their lives, and they will be remembered as the heroes who helped protect humanity. In the hospital, Meng wakes up from the magic element syndrome and sees the nurse calling for the doctor. After a little while, Shang shows up to visit her. She tells him she's hungry, and he happily replies that he now has money and grabs a hamburger and some fried chicken. Just then, Ma Chun walks in and scolds Shang for not knowing how to be a good father. The goddess knocks on the door and sighs when she sees Shang with a child, She uses an enchantment to tap into Meng's body to communicate. Ma Chun is frustrated and yells at Xiang about what he's done to Meng. Through Meng, the goddess casts a spell that knocks Ma Chun unconscious. Now, the spirit of the goddess temporarily resides in Meng's body. The spirit tells Xiang that she lost her god powers when she arrived and hadn't expected them to be with the goddess. When Xiang asks if she's the real goddess martial artist, she replies in a complicated way she is. But without her powers, she can't really be considered a god. Xiang then asks if she's here to get her powers back, but she tells him that the game is still going on, and that he'll need to win to survive. After that, she kisses Xiang and vanishes into thin air. Still confused, Meng looks at Xiang and says the goddess is pretty. The goddess wonders what she's doing in the hospital room. In the inland deeper area, monsters begin crawling out of holes and ditches. A notification pops up stating that the max player level has now increased to level 90. A squad searches through one of the dungeons but can't find any monsters or the boss. One of the members points out that since the skyline tree collapsed recently, the monster spawns have stopped. Another player gets really anxious, mentioning that he took out a loan to buy equipment and might not be able to pay it back. In S City, on Chang'an Street, life's gotten tough for the players after the destruction of the skyline tree. Many are selling their equipment at rock-bottom prices, and robberies have increased. In just a month, crime rates have surged, and people are starting to worry that S City might turn into a criminal hotspot if the association doesn't step in. Meanwhile, a clan leader-level meeting is held at the Player Association building. Sitting next to Xiang, the goddess is overthinking her interaction at the hospital and wonders if Xiang might think she's acting weird. Yun Han from the Green Sheep Guild starts calling out the association, referring to some people as random cats and dogs. Jiang Qi quickly reminds him that if it wasn't for Xiang during the Skyline Tree battle, Yun Han and his crew would have been done for. And yet, he's still acting so cocky. The leader of the Chamber of Commerce, Wu Kei, stands up and backs Xiang, saying that she will help him if he ever wants to buy anything. She even offers him a diamond rank membership for extra perks. Xiang thanks her, but Jiang chimes in. He points out that even though he's been working hard, all he's got is a gold rank membership. Wu Kei air shrugs and says she can do whatever she wants since she likes him. The goddess Long points out that Xiang already has a daughter. Wu immediately replies that he only adopted the girl during the disaster and is still single. Then she teases Long, asking why she knows so much about him if she doesn't feel for Xiang. Long tries to stop her, irritated by her nonsense. While the two argue, Zhang jumps in and calls Xiang trash, who only depends on girls. Both Long and Wu tell him to shut up. Meanwhile, Xiang thinks that he probably shouldn't have come to this meeting at all. Xiang then recalls something from 2 days ago when Thunder Armadillo came to invite him to the meeting. He mentioned that those attending the meeting would get a $50,000 benefit. Xiang's eyes lit up when he realized this could fix his financial problems. Over in Greenland, players are fighting over who gets to kill the few monsters left. Since the skyline tree fell, players have had difficulty surviving as weapon prices have plummeted, and monster spawns are rare. Back in the meeting room, Thunder Armadillo Lao Li walks in, and Jiang warns him that if he's any later, the building will be torn down. Lai finally starts the meeting, and Li Bing asks everyone to watch a video. The video shows a bunch of monsters emerging from a pit, and players battle them. Wu recognizes it as the Deep Abyss Pit in H Country, and Li adds that many high-level monsters are coming out of it, much like the Skyline Tree. Reinforcements from countries A, R, M, and Y are heading to H Country to help. Zhang quickly says they should head there. Zhang sarcastically comments that the association is telling them this a month late, implying that the association is useless and shouldn't even exist because of its incompetence. Li Bing is visibly frustrated by his remark, and Jiang just points out that Xiang did that to get a reaction from her. A month ago, in the H Country Abyss Pit Hole Command Department, the Player Association leader, Kui Yunjin, started the meeting by saying they've already lost 3 cities. He questioned why they hadn't contacted Z Country for help, given that their players are the highest ranked. The Minister of the Disaster Office, Zhang Shen, disagrees and argues that since Z Country's players are top tier with the best gear, they'd just take all the equipment and rewards from the pit hole. They'd only call Z Country if they agreed to share the loot with the rest of the country. The acting head of the M Country Player Association, Smith, chimes in and says their association will handle the Deep Abyss, and their White Bear Guild is already on the way to provide support. Shiro Yusuke, the leader of the R Country Association, also confirmed that their Ninja Guild and White Ghost Guild will be there in 2 days to help. So, the H Country Association decided to leave it in their hands, agreeing to offer compensation as needed. Sui suddenly stood up and argued they would regret not calling Z Country for help. Jin then reminded him that he was the one who gave Kui his clan leader title and that he had the authority to remove him from his position. Kui quickly backed down. Back at the S-City Player Association building, Li Bing explains that they've already negotiated with H country 3 times, but haven't gotten anywhere. The other faction thinks that since they successfully raided the skyline tree, they now have tons of loot. So, they're requesting half of the loot from Z country to raid their island's pit hole. Jiang disagrees with the idea and argues that sacrifices were made to obtain the items, so they can't just give them away. Lei tells him to hold off for now since the meeting isn't over yet, and tells Yun to get to the point. Li then shows more videos, including one of the monsters like the Deep Abyss Black Dragon Kabata, wreaking devastation in the city. Kabata is tearing everything apart with its fire, and a soldier is freaking out, worried about his life. One of the members comments that the Black Dragon is like a mobile raid weapon. Jiang asks when this attack happened, and she says the video came in yesterday. She explains that for the second time, the pit hole erupted in a disaster much worse than the skyline tree's destruction. The pit hole destroyed 3 cities and wiped out the top 8 guilds, and left 6,000 players demoralized, with over 350,000 civilians dead. Lei notes that the higher-ups are hesitant to send anyone to H country because of the recent destruction from the tree. He points out that if things keep going the way they are, H city will fall in 3 months, and it could start affecting the edges of their country soon. He introduces Kui Yuan Zhen, who has been requesting their help. Jiang mocks him, saying he's only coming to them after getting beaten badly. Lei cuts him off and explains that Kui has been pleading for support. Lei then formally announces that the higher-ups have decided to back H country, leading to a pact between the association and the goddess martial artist clan, preparing to send an expedition force to the affected areas. Kui bows, desperately asking for help. Lei turns to Jiang and asks why he was so eager for this mission earlier, but now seems against it. Jiang acknowledges that this expedition will cost many lives. Kui is still crying for help. Jiang gets fed up, calling the meeting pointless, and storms out. Wu also leaves, mocking Long by saying that Shang will be all she has left if anything happens to her. Later, Jiang asks his subordinate if he has found clues about something. The subordinate mentions that he has tracked down some leads on who killed Zhang's brother. Zhang is hit with shock and despair, realizing that Shang was just at the meeting with this person. His lackey also says he found something interesting during the investigation.